All right. So what I want to talk to you guys today about is, are you actually in a caloric deficit? Let's go ahead and break that down. So a lot of people ask or get confused about why your fat loss has stalled despite doing everything right. So every week, somebody says, I'm in a deficit, but I'm not losing weight. Whatever we're doing is not working. We need to change the plan, whatever the case may be. On the surface, it does make sense, right? They're tracking everything. They're hitting their macros. They're training consistently and avoiding anything that looks like a cheat meal or any kind of food that would throw them off, right? But despite all of that, the scale just isn't budging. Biofeedback is good. Clothes fit the same. The assumption is that the body is broken. Hormones are all off, or they somehow hit a mysterious metabolic wall of some sort. Right? They're this one of one genetic anomaly that, oh, I'm doing everything right. It just must be me. Out of all the people in the world, what, 9 billion people, it's just me. Something is not working, right? And that's never the case. But here's the truth. If you're in a true, consistent, measurable energy deficit, note I said energy deficit, not caloric deficit, your body will lose fat over time. Biology pretty much guarantees that. You're never going to beat the law of thermodynamics. So when your fat loss stalls, the better question is, are you actually in a deficit, or do you think you are, if that makes sense? So let's break down the most common reasons why people are unknowingly either eating at maintenance or in a slight surplus, despite having the best of intentions. So number one, you're just underestimating your caloric intake. Research consistently shows that people underestimate their food intake by anywhere from 20 to 40%, especially when tracking by memory or estimation or just eyeballing things, right? It's not that you're being lazy or dishonest, is that you're human, right? You're not constantly auditing yourself. You're not being 100% sure of what you're doing for each meal, day to day, day in, day out is accounted for, right? Common tracking errors can include things like fats, for instance, underlogging fats, failing to account cooking oils, sauces, seasonings, or relying on like pre-loaded food entries in apps that are inaccurate. So, for instance, if you go on MyFitnessPal, type in grilled chicken breast, well, you're going to get thousands of entries for that. And who put in those thousands of entries? It could be my neighbor over here. It could be my grandma. It could be whoever. And they could be wildly inaccurate. They're not measured against any kind of standard. It's user entered data, right? So even though this certain app says, hey, this grilled chicken breast, this 6 ounces of chicken breast is 150 grams of protein, you might be saying, yeah, that just doesn't seem right, inherently right. So that would be a case to where you need to dig a little deeper, right? For instance, you might log 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, but what you're actually doing is you're taking a spoon and having a mountain of peanut butter sitting on top of it, whereas really 1.5 or 2 tablespoons, right? That's an extra 100 to 200 calories right there. If you repeat this across 2 or 3 times in a day or across several days, I mean, you're looking at several hundred, if not several thousand additional calories week in, week out. Easiest way to fix this is just buy a food scale. Um, Scan the barcodes of the foods that you're eating. That's why I like using Chronometer. I think my Fitness Pal still has it if you buy the version, but just use Chronometer. It's the best one out there. Um, Especially the leaner that you get, the smaller amount of room for error that you have. So getting pretty much dialed in with this just from the jump is honestly just a good idea in general. The number two is tracking does not always mean adherence. So logging your meals does not automatically mean that you're compliant with what the plan says. So many people track what they intended to eat, but it's not actually what they ate, right? Or they forgot to add in those small extra bites, licks, handful of peanuts, at their work desk, condiments, a splash of coffee creamer, an extra scoop of rice, an extra bite of this, an extra bite of that. All of these add up. Could be 200 to 500 calories a day. While that's that different, while that like difference, depending on what side of the spectrum that you're on, the 100 to 500 calories, right? Well, if you're on the end of that spectrum, on the higher end of that spectrum, that's an additional 3,500 calories a week. So those small licks and bites, all that stuff adds up. That's the difference between being in a decent deficit and just full blown maintenance or even a full blown surplus. To fix this, you just need to track everything that you consume, not what you have intended on your plan. Right? If you eat it, you log it. Period. It does you no good to go into your app like a Chronometer or MyFitnessPal and just copy the meals from yesterday onto today and said, "Oh yeah, I'm probably gonna eat the same thing today." Well, for me, I'd rather just log it as I eat it, and that saves me right there. Um, Number three is you're eating clean, but not accurately eating. So another trap is equating the word healthy or clean eating with being in a deficit. Clean meals, wholesome foods, even doing meal prep. This can create a sense of security, but those calories still count, right? Olive oil, avocado oil, almond butter, peanut butter, protein bars, these macro-friendly snacks. All these can be pretty caloric dense. Eating clean can absolutely support fat loss, but only when it's paired with a controlled caloric intake. Don't just assume that because your food choices are better than they were before, that you're supporting a deficit, right? I don't care if you were eating McDonald's 4 times a day and then you got on a wholesome food diet. Are you going to instantly see weight loss? Well, you could. You'll probably feel a hell of a lot better, but if you're still not in a deficit, then you probably won't see a lot of change at all. You will see a change from like an inflammation standpoint and things like that. And you'll probably feel a heck of a lot better. But if we're looking at just, um, the subjective data of are we losing body fat, maybe not, right? So don't just assume because your food choices are quote unquote better, that they're better for you, and that they're supporting that deficit. You need to make sure that you're auditing your meals and do the math. It doesn't take that long to do that, especially if you're using an app, right? Make sure that your clean eating targets are also aligned with your daily macro targets that you're trying to hit as well too. You can for sure overeat on healthy food. It's possible, it's doable, especially if you get into the realm of these healthy gas station snacks, the protein bars and the protein drinks and the protein chips. Yeah, all that stuff is calories. It just doesn't mean that it's healthy because it says the word high protein in it. Doesn't necessarily mean that at all. Number four, you haven't adjusted your deficit in a pretty long time. So the same caloric deficit that worked when you were 200 pounds won't work the same at 185, right? As you lose weight, your energy expenditure is gonna drop down. You're carrying less total mass on your body, which requires fewer calories to maintain, right? So this means that your original deficit eventually becomes maintenance unless it's recalibrated. So, for example, if your maintenance at 200 pounds is, I don't know, 2,500 calories, right? A 500 calorie deficit puts you at 2,000 calories, right? But if your new maintenance is only, let's say if you drop down to 185, right? And you're eating 2,400, right? Um, Let me think about that. Hang on. Okay, well, let's do this. For example, if your maintenance calories is at 2,600, right, for a 200-pound individual, a 500 caloric deficit is going to put you at 2,100, right? But if your new maintenance at 185 pounds is only 2,400, 2,100 is no longer a 500 caloric deficit. It's only 300, right? So you need to adjust based on that. Progress is going to slow down as well too. So to fix this, you need to reassess your maintenance intake every 8 to 12-ish, pounds loss, right? Adjust your deficit accordingly, or incorporate a period of reverse dieting, a diet break, maintenance period, things like that, which I typically have my clients do after we dieted for 12-ish weeks, somewhere in there. It's obviously individual, dependent, person to person kind of thing, but at some point we're going to go back up to maintenance, reevaluate things, and then just go from there. Number five is a big one. Your weekends are just ruining your work week, essentially. You're in a deficit Monday through Thursday, but you eat like an asshole, to be frank. On the weekends, you can easily wipe out all of your progress. Just 1 or 2 days of overeating let's just say 700 to 1,000 calories is enough to eliminate a whole week's worth of being in a deficit. And this is true, especially if your weekends involve alcohol, fast food, a large social meals that aren't tracked or you're just estimating, right? Now, you can fix this by treating weekends as the same structure as weekdays. To me, it's just another day, to be honest. Um, if you're going to be social, pre-log those social meals into your, macro tracking app, and then build your day around those events. Use lower fat, higher protein meals beforehand to create more of a caloric margin for you and to keep you full and satisfied during the day because you don't want to go into those social meals hungry, right? You want to be somewhat full getting to that. And at the end all be all, even if you go into that meal and you are slightly over at the end of the day, slightly over is way better than just saying F it and going way over, right? And because at the end of the day, consistency is really what matters. If you're consistently going over 1,500, 2,000 calories on your weekend free meal, as compared to somebody who goes 100 to 200 over, that consistently is going to equate to a lot of missed progress or a lot of progress, essentially. So, kind of two sides of the coin on that. So, the next one is the scale is lying, but only if you don't understand what it's doing. So, fat loss is not linear. I wish it was. If it was linear, it would make projected targets and timelines line up really good, but it's not. The scale is not a daily indicator of success or failure. Let's repeat that. The scale is not a daily indicator of success or failure. It's a data point. That's all that is. Scale weight can be influenced by a ton of things. Sodium intake, your water intake from the day before, inflammation, stress levels, hormonal shift. Did you have bowel movements yesterday? Did you eat a ton of carbs yesterday? Stress, sleep. I mean, you name it. Scale fluctuations are it's a spider web of events of what it could be. Right? It's a tool. Use it as a tool. Don't use it as the end all be all. And most people, they give up a lot of the times because they think they're in a plateau and things like stall out for them. Um, but more times than not, a lot of times their body's just hanging on to water. Um, and this could be things due from cortisol, increased stress, poor sleep. And once that stuff is regulated, you're going to shed a ton of water, and then boom, that weight's going to just drop out. So don't get discouraged if it's 4, 5, 6 days in a row and scales not moving. Evaluate yourself with what's going on in your life, and once you get a couple of days of a little less stressful events, better sleep, I guarantee you, as long as you're in a deficit, that scale is going to continue to move in the right direction. And the next one is your stress, your sleep, and your recovery. You're shooting yourself in the foot, is what it boils down to. You cannot, I will say this 1,000 times, you cannot diet your way out of poor sleep and chronic stress. Elevated cortisol impairs digestion. It's going to blunt fat oxidation and promotes water retention, making it harder to see results when you're doing everything right. Poor sleep is going to have, on the flip side of that coin, poor sleep is going to have reduced insulin sensitivity, increases ghrelin, lowers leptin, and disrupts the appetite regulation within your body, making hunger and cravings harder to manage. The fix of this is, I'm not going to say easy, but it's simple. Improve your sleep hygiene, 7 to 9 hours a night. If you can, no screens an hour before bed. Make sure that you have a regular wake up and a regular go to bed time. Take walks before you hop in bed. No caffeine after 2 p.m. Make sure that your room is a cold, dark environment. A hot shower before you get in bed. Like there's so many things that you can do to get your body pretty much primed to go to sleep, right? If you're running 100 miles an hour and think that you're just going to come home, take a quick shower and hop in bed and fall asleep like that, well, you probably won't. And if you do, it's not going to be very restful sleep. Next point is you're consistent, but you're not consistent enough. Consistency is not hitting your macros Monday through Thursday. it happens across a 7 day span, right? If you untrack snacks, a meal that wasn't logged accurately, or a day where you were just off, you were at Carowinds and I couldn't take my food in, so I said, "F it, I'm going to eat, whatever I want. One day is not going to hurt." Um, this can be enough to shift your entirely weekly intake up by hundreds or even several thousand calories. Um, Progress in this aspect is a math equation. Even if you're off by 10% per day, you may think that you're in a deficit, but you're not. You're at maintenance, and maintenance doesn't produce fat loss. So if we're in a 10% deficit and you're eating 2,000 calories daily, well, that 200 calorie reduction that we just did, right? That little handful of almonds that you ate in the break room, or that little small miniature candy bar that you had in your desk since Halloween, yep, you just wipe that out for the entire day. Um, the leaner that you get, and the less food that you have at your disposal during a cut, the small things add up and are magnified to an even greater degree at that point. Best thing that you can do is just tighten up. Just tighten up your execution 7 days straight, and just see the progressions that are made. Weigh your food out. Track everything precisely. Follow your plan without deviation. Then compare this 7 days on plan to an average week for you, where you're 60 to 70% on, right? And you'll see the difference. I promise you. So, at the end of be all, out of all of this, if you're not losing fat, the first step is stop blaming your metabolism or your genetics or your family tree, or my mom is big, so I'm big boned. I'm not going to lose. I genetically can't. Nope. Let's just cut that out right now. That's not a thing. Your environment does play a role in if you're overweight, right? Like that does have some validity to it. But at the end of the day, you can control what you're eating. You can control sitting on the couch or getting up and go for a walk. You can control doing a 20-minute at-home workout in your bedroom, in your living room, in your kitchen, at the park, instead of scrolling on TikTok for 20 minutes. Right? Those are things that we can control. A lot of these cases, let's just say probably 90% of them, when we look at things subjectively, look at the data, the deficit is either not steep enough, it's not consistent enough, or it's just not accurately tracked. Now that's not failure; it's fixable. But you got to be honest with yourself first. You need to do a self audit. I mean, fat loss requires strategy, a structure, and a lot of self awareness. If you want to see real progress, you can't just try harder next week. I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to do it. I promise you. Um, get clearer with the picture that you're going to do next week, instead of just try harder. Be more precise, stay more consistent, and give your body the input that it needs, not just what you think that you're giving it, right? So it's just like when you correct the leaks, right? If you got a bucket that's got a hole in it, and you're wondering, where's all my water going? Where's all my results going? I don't have any. Well, patch that hole up, and things are going to start to come together. So that's the easiest way to put it. You got to audit yourself, make sure that what you're doing is actually an honest description of what you're actually doing. Because even me, I slip up sometimes, but I audit myself often, honestly, every day. I really do. That's why I have a little checklist to be sure that what I'm doing aligns to the plan at hand. Because if I don't, I could be off by a little bit, and I don't want to be off. I want to be dialed in. I want to make the most of my time and get to my goal sooner than later. So, anyway, this was today's Wednesday call. I thank you guys for tuning in. Any questions, comments, concerns, rebuttals, arguments, whatever that you got, drop them in the